Even though hot iron can often be manipulated just like working with clay, it's pretty impractical to try and move red hot iron with your bare hands. So for that, you're going to need tools. And while making all your own tools is a wonderful fantasy, the reality is that you're going to need to start with tools to make tools. Even the earliest Iron Age blacksmiths had the benefit of Bronze Age tools, and the earliest Bronze Age metalworkers had the benefit of Stone Age tools. So we're thousands and thousands of years into tool development at this point, and there's no reason to start with a rock instead of a hammer. You can buy lots of good hammers. Well, I have some very nice hammers that were made by other blacksmiths and hammers that I've made that isn't what I started with. My very first hammer was a 2.5-pound Sears Craftsman cross-peen hammer. I think they called them engineers' hammers when they sold them in the store because they didn't really think about blacksmiths. And I probably have more time with this hammer in the shop over the last 35 plus years than any other single hammer, and it's still a good hammer. It's got some wear and tear. The face isn't exactly straight anymore because it's kind of been mushroomed back and it's been reground and redressed. It needs to be redressed again, but it's still a good usable hammer. My guess is you could probably find a hammer like this at a garage sale or a flea market for $2 or $3 if you needed to. So you don't need to spend lots of money on your first hammer. Ball peen hammers are quite easy to find in smaller sizes once you start getting up into 2-pound and plus. Ball peen hammers aren't quite as common, but they're very common in the 1 to 1.5 pound range, and that's not a bad place to start. These little double-sided sledgehammers are also not bad, and they're available in 2, 3, 4 pounds. Now, if you're just starting, a 3 or 4 pound hammer is probably too heavy. I would start with 2, maybe 2.5 pounds if you're used to working. If you're not used to working, not used to swinging a hammer, maybe a 1 to 1.5 pound hammer is where you should start. It all depends on your strength and your experience. Swinging a hammer that's too heavy will eventually lead to elbow problems, maybe shoulder problems, wrist problems, and that is no fun. The other thing that leads to some of those repetitive use injuries are handles that are too big or too small. If you have to overgrip to hold onto your hammer, the handle doesn't fit you properly, you need to adjust up or down depending. And that's someplace that having an assortment of hammers helps because you can figure out which handle fits the best and then adapt your other handles to fit the same. Over time, you're going to acquire other hammer shapes, various sinking hammers and raising hammers, maybe repoussé hammers if you get into repoussé, special hammers for forging leaves. Rounding hammers are very popular for general forging today, but not something you're likely to find at your local hardware store, flea market, or a garage sale. That's one you're going to have to find in the blacksmithing community, and as a result, they're probably going to be a little bit more expensive. And even though specialty hammers and an assortment of sizes in hammers are really nice to have in the shop, ultimately you're probably going to end up with 2, 3, 4 dozen hammers. I'll bet I've got at least 4 dozen hammers in the shop, all of which get used occasionally. The truth of the matter is that one good hammer that you're comfortable working with will do 80 to 90% of the work you're doing in the shop, and you don't need those other hammers to start with. Now, if you're just getting started and you're going to classes and workshops and demonstrations and you're hanging out with other smiths because you don't have all the tools, having your own hammer is a good place to start.